Today we're talking about appraisal gaps and how they can be very powerful in getting your offer accepted, the risk involved, and how these appraisal gaps can work to your advantage. Plus, we're going to talk about what homeowners must do to protect their interests too. So let's get started. We all know that the low inventory and the high demand is driving prices through the roof. To be a true contender in a bidding war, you can count on this. If the house is decent, you will be in a multi-offer situation. Buyers are being forced to do some really untraditional things that we normally do in a balanced market. As a buyer making an offer on a home, be prepared to make an offer over list price. If you're the lucky winner of the bidding war and you are financing your new home, your lender is going to order an appraisal. So what happens if the appraised value comes in lower than the contractual amount that you agreed to pay for the home? That's what we call an appraisal gap. And it's happening a lot in today's market. Let's back up a sec and talk about the three most common scenarios and how your realtor can structure your purchase offer concerning the appraisal. In each of these scenarios, we're going to use the exact same house and the same purchase price. Say you made an offer on a house that was listed for $300,000. And to be competitive, you're offering $325,000. And to further make your offer look very attractive to the seller, you're offering to waive the appraisal contingency. Okay, the appraisal's been completed and the market value came in at $300,000. So what now? It's important to know that before you agree to waive that appraisal contingency in your purchase contract, that your lender cannot lend even one dime over the appraised value amount. In this scenario, you as buyer must come to closing with the appraisal gap difference. In other words, you need to come to closing with an additional $25,000 in cash. You're probably thinking, why on earth would anyone pay more than the appraised value for a home? In today's market, it's happening a lot more often than what you'd think. Savvy home buyers know that we are in an appreciating market, and in just a few short months, that appraisal gap difference is going to be made up in rapid equity growth. In other words, at the rate that home prices are increasing, chances are in a few short months, the market value of your new home would have already increased for the amount that you actually paid for it. And home sellers, here's a very important tip. If you decide to take an offer with an appraisal waiver, before you accept this offer, have your realtor verify that the buyer actually has the funds in the bank. Get it in writing. In the event that there is an appraisal gap, don't be blinded by the generously increased purchase amount until you do. Now let's talk about what happens when there's an appraisal gap and there is an appraisal contingency in the purchase contract. Using the same house as before, you made an offer on a house that was listed for $300,000. But you made an offer for $325,000. And the appraisal value came in at $300,000. If you have an appraisal contingency in your purchase contract, you are under no obligation to purchase this home for $325,000. Besides, you wouldn't be able to obtain financing. Remember, a lender isn't going to loan any amount over the appraised value. So here is the most common options. Keep in mind, the seller doesn't want to lose the deal either. It's exhausting to sell these days with the constant parade of strangers coming and going, having to pour over multiple offers and making the hard decision which one to take, having to push back moving plans, and more. However, for some sellers, the selling process can be no big deal, especially if the house is vacant already. So in this scenario, the initial request will come from the seller, asking the buyer to come to closing with the additional $25,000 in cash at closing. If the buyer cannot or will not pay the appraisal gap difference, then the seller can elect to sell the home for the appraised amount. And in this case, it's $300,000. Ironically, that's exactly what they wanted to begin with. Oftentimes, we see the appraisal gap difference split equally between the buyer and the seller. In this example, the seller would then agree to sell the house for $312,500, and the buyer would come to closing with $12,500 in cash. Now, if neither party can agree, then the contract can be dissolved. The buyer would get their earnest money deposit refunded, and the seller would have to put the house back on the market. Home sellers, before making the decision to dissolve that contract, please be aware that appraisal amount could follow your property up to 90 days, depending on what type of an appraisal was done. Meaning, if you choose to dissolve that contract and your next buyer is financing, that prior appraisal may be an issue. Your realtor should be able to advise you based on the specific details about your purchase contract. So whether you're on the selling side or the buying side of your real estate transaction, know how an appraisal gap can either make or break your deal. I hope you found this week's video helpful, and if you did, hit that like button and give me a thumbs up. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm here every single Monday to help you make smart decisions when buying and selling a house. And until then, I'm Lisa Kelly, and I'll see you on the next one.